All right, everybody, welcome to the GM show. This is Brian Green and Henry Metcalf. We're really excited for the opportunity to have Rand Sargent on the podcast today. Rand and I go way back, and Rand, I always looked up to you. You're always super kind to me, and we both had the opportunity to play basketball at Davis High School and grow up in Kaysville, and we're just super thankful that you're on today. Um, Kind of to kick us off, it's been a long time since you and I've had a deep conversation, and would love to just hear, since you graduated high school, what's been your story, and where have you been, and like how have you ended up being where you are today? Do you mind just kind of providing some background to our listeners on kind of what you're up to and where you've been?
Sure. I would love to, and thanks for having me on. It's fun to get on here and chat with you a little bit. So, I mean, that's a lot of time since high school. Looking back now, it feels like it's yesterday. But went uh, went on a mission. Um, was at Weber State for a couple years. Played golf up there. Got married in 2008, and worked at AT&T as I got through school. Kind of doing the wireless thing. And then got into tech, started doing software and hardware sales, and did that for 8 or 9 years. Kind of bounced around a little bit. Um, and it was 2018, kind of early on in 2018, that I was just burned out. I after bouncing around a little bit, I felt like every software job was a little bit the same. That you're transactional, and there wasn't really the relationships in the process that I was hoping for in a career. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine who Brian knows, Ryan Flint. He was a previous partner of mine. And Ryan had been in real estate at the time, probably 5 years, and had done well. And I had just asked him, essentially, hey, do you know any smaller companies that are hiring? I'm looking to just kind of shift out of software. And he had had somebody just recently leave his team. And so he said, hey, for a couple months, why don't you come help me? Why don't you get licensed and come help me for a little bit? We'll figure something out. We'll find something. And got licensed that summer of 2018. Started with him in August of 2018, and then the rest is history. I was with him for about 4.5 years, and then we mutually split ways about 2 years ago. Um, so that's kind of the high level story. We got four kids, and they range from 14 and a half, our oldest daughter. Our little guy just turned 5 on the 4th, so just last week we celebrated him. So kind of a fun, wild ride the last 20 years or so since that time.
No, that's awesome. When you were first getting into real estate, I don't know Ryan, but what does he do and like what attracted you to that field potentially?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, but I think looking back at that time in my life, I was trying to find something that I could see myself doing for 20, 30 years down the road. And I knew software wasn't that for me. I know some people that's great, and I didn't want to get into management necessarily, so I was just looking for something different. And Ryan was a buddy of mine. We've been buddies since I was 4, he was 3 when he moved in our neighborhood. I remember walking down to his house when they moved in, and my mom taking me down there to meet him, and played sports all growing up. Um, but I think it's a mix of potential, lifestyle. It's kind of relationships. And then for me, kind of looking back on the last 6 or 7 years now that I've been in it, I think one of the biggest things that I love about it is, number one, the relationships that I have with my clients and with the people I get to interact with every day. And number two is just the autonomy to be able to work when you want to work. There's a lot of times where the weeks are busy and you have more than 40 hours a week that you're doing stuff. But there's also times where you can step away and go to kids' events, or you can step out and play 9 or 18 holes in the morning, and then finish up and catch up at night and do some of that stuff. So there's a lot of pros in it for me. Every day's different, which I love. I didn't like sitting at a desk all day every day in the software world, and so this has been a good change for that as well.
That's awesome, Rand. Speaking about like building relationships, And I come from the tech world now in real estate, and I'm finding that more than ever, relationships matter. How when you started working with Ryan and now with Mountain West, what's your what's your process look like to really build like a strong strategic relationship or partnership with either existing property owners or buyers that, maybe we can learn from? And just curious kind of how you approach that relationship building process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally dependent on who you're dealing with. Excuse me. Um, for a lot of my clients, it's just being yourself and realizing that we each have our own unique interests and hobbies, and getting to know people on a more personal level, I think has helped me. Whether it's going and playing, 9 or 18 with somebody, that's one of my favorite ways to get to know somebody, because you have them for 2 to 4 or 5 hours out on the course, and there's minimal distractions. You get to know about their family life, you get to know about their background, their upbringing. There's ways that you can connect out there that you don't get to in an office setting. So I like to take advantage of that when I can. But I think ultimately it's a lot of, especially on the buyer side, it's trying to just uncover what people's needs and desires are, and then trying to bring value and find solutions to, hey, here's 3 buildings that I think fit what you're looking for, and then trying to eliminate some of the noise that they might feel on their side, because sometimes I feel like buyers will hold out and they're looking for that perfect building, which if we can find it, that's great. But there's so many times where they'll pass up a good opportunity waiting for something better, and then something better doesn't come along in the time frame that they're needing it, and then they get desperate. So for me, the process of relationship building is just, getting to know people. I think that's the most important thing. And then building that trust, and then delivering and being a reliable person who answers the phone and responds in a timely manner is something we try and strive for. Some days are better than others. As you know, it gets busy and hectic, but that's kind of our MO around here.
I think it probably helps that you're an absolute stick on the course too, so you can impress people whenever you take them out.
You guys are too nice. I do love to play, and it's funny because I get asked that all the time, like, "Hey, how long you been playing?" And um, well, I got started when I was like 10 or 11, and I remember going to Valley View Golf Course to their junior camp and junior league, and it was every Monday morning at like 6 a.m. in the summer. And Dave Curl was the guy up at Valley View that ran that, who ended up being my coach at Weber State later on. But through that junior league is where I met 2 of my buddies that we still play almost every week. So it's, going on 30 years with these guys that we've gotten to just hang out on almost a weekly basis and play together. So it's been fun.
It's awesome. I
Yeah.
think golf is, I was telling Brian this, golf is like such a unique sport. I grew up playing like my whole life as well. I didn't play in college, I wish, but it's not as good as Rand is. And
Whatever.
I think it's a really unique sport because you hold on to like the what ifs more than any other sport. Like you could go
Mhm.
out any day on Davis Park or Valley View, step up on 13 and think, I hit 2 good shots and I'm going to make a birdie, right?
Mhm.
And you don't really have that. I don't go into the gym in basketball and say, I'm going to hit 45 out of 50 like Brian can from three on any given day and feel like I can play in the NBA again, And I think
Yeah.
just hold on to this like pursuit of excellence in golf and almost this unrealistic expectation that if I play hard enough, practice hard enough, I could be Scotty Scheffler, right? And it's just like this funny thing that it's unique to golf more than any other sport, I think. And one question I had for you is just you've played at such a high level and you're probably constantly pursuing excellence in golf. And like, how has that impacted how you view work and how you pursue excellence in your job?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I agree with you. I think that, I mean, I remember watching Brian play. I'd been graduated for a couple years, but I remember going back and watching Brian play at Davis, then on at Utah State. And he's an athlete. And I remember I think we played in a rec league, didn't we?
Yeah.
You'd probably been graduated a few years maybe, but
Yeah.
I was just kind of the assist guy in that league and watching Brian take over. But I think golf, compared to basketball, for example, I think basketball is so, when you're in a game, there's so much of it being reactive. You kind of analyze in that very second, is a pass or a dribble going to be better here? Or where's the open lane? How can I move without the ball to get to where, a teammate can find me? Um, Golf, in a way, especially tournament golf, it's so different because you have 3, 4 minutes between each shot. And if you're walking, you have all this time where you're just in your own head thinking about the next shot, or thinking, if you're angry about the shot you just hit, you have to be able to let that go. And it's, I tell my kids that are now getting into it, I tell them, like, hey, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be frustrated, but let that be for 5 or 10 seconds and then move on, because you can't change it. Right.
Right.
And when you get to that next shot, if your head's not clear, you're still thinking about the last result, you're not able to perform, um, that next step or the next shot. So, as I look at that and how that relates to my work every day, it's kind of the same thing. There's some deals that are frustrating, or that take way longer than you think they should, or they get more complicated. There's little things that often come up, and there's nothing you can do to control those other than just try to mitigate and help, whether you're on a buyer side, seller side, landlord, tenant, doesn't matter. All those little things you got to be able to navigate in the best way you can. But at the end of the day, if you can't control it, you've got to be able to just let it go and move on to the next deal and help the next person, right? Um, so I would say that's probably how it's impacted me the most is, there's always little things that can happen. There's always little tweaks that you're trying to make, like in golf with your swing. Same thing in work, right? There's little improvements you're trying to make every day. How can we be more efficient here, or how can I make this hour of time flow a little bit better than yesterday? Um, it's just the little things in my mind, that continual process of improvement.
That's awesome, dude. And I mean, sports and work and family, it's all, a lot of it's just in our head. And it's cool hearing your approach to golf and life. And I'm sure it's led you to a lot of success. Um, I'm curious, like, there's a lot of different asset classes in real estate, and I don't know where you started with Ryan's team, but I think one thing we wanted to talk about is just understanding, like, it looks like you're an industrial right now, and what kind of has led you to that, and what do you like about it? How are you approaching it, and what's the forecast look like on that asset class, in the next couple of years?
Yeah. Yeah, when I started with Ryan, I remember day one, walking in, and he kind of just, I mean, I had my computer, right? And he gave me access to all of his files and whatnot. And I think the thing that I was able to help him with right off the bat was just getting a little bit more organized than he was prior. And that helped me understand a little bit just the process and the deal flow. But we were working mostly on industrial uh, assets. Being in Davis County, it's a little bit different than Salt Lake County or Utah County, even, where the market down there in Salt Lake, for example, there's so much more industrial building than there is up here, right? We don't have very many huge Class A industrial developments, and some of the industrial stuff is a little bit older. It's chopped up. And so being in Davis County, it's a little bit multidisciplinary, where we do have some office deals, we do have a few land deals, there's different things that we do, but the majority of it is industrial. And what I like about it is it's not overly complicated. You look at like a retail deal, and you might have a tenant that needs A, B, C, and D. And those are non-negotiables to have a location work. And some of that might be demographic. Some of that might be building characteristics, or frontage on certain roads, or access to freeways, whatever that might be. Industrial is a little bit different for the most part, in that it can go in places where it's a little bit more off the beaten path. Buildings are a little rougher sometimes. But at the end of the day, the industrial stuff is where a lot of the magic happens with production and manufacturing and logistics and things like that. And it's been really fun and rewarding to get to know some of the business owners in Davis County and nationwide that come into our market. But to get to know some of these guys who I'm always blown away on a weekly basis when I meet some of these guys who have these little niche businesses that you would never think you'd be able to make a living at. And these guys kill it. And it's just something, it's a service they provide that you don't think about. It's maybe 2 or 3 contact points away from your daily life, but it impacts your daily life. And there's 10,000 square feet of it here, or there's 20,000 square feet of it here. It's really fascinating. Um, and as far as the industrial outlook, I think it's great. I think Utah during COVID was a pretty business friendly state compared to like California or some of the other more restrictive uh, rules they had with regards to business operation. So we saw a lot of um, businesses moving into the state and into the market, which has helped us. It tightened up supply certainly for a while, and then some new builds got started, but rates started to impact that, as you know, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been a little bit of back and forth, but I think the outlook for that is good in Utah. I think the industrial market is strong. Vacancy up here in Davis County specifically is like sub 3%.
Wow.
And so it's, there's not much space out there. There's some, but it usually goes pretty quick unless there's some challenges inherent with the building or the space that preclude groups from taking a serious look at it. But overall, I think the market's pretty strong. I'm excited about the next couple of years.
When you're looking at kind of the ideal client, because it sounds like you work with a lot of different groups, whether that's small and then maybe some bigger as well.
Mhm.
What are kind of a question we have a lot, because we're a smaller group that's only been around like a year and a half, and we try to do a lot of work with brokers and find success with them, but we don't have a track record or reputation, right? And so for somebody in our shoes, and then maybe overall as well, like what does an ideal client look like where you'd be like really excited to go do business for them or with them?
Honestly, I think for me, it's not so much size as it is a person's readiness to make a deal. Um, we have a lot of clients that are 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, but those sometimes turn into 10,000 square feet, right? I have a group that um, about 6 years ago, 6 years ago, we put them in a space that was about 3,600 feet out here in Clearfield. Um, Couple years after that, they moved into a space that was about 15. Then they took on an additional 11 and just barely did a deal for about 36.
Wow.
So watching that process over the last 5 or 6 years, just as a broker on the outside, has been super rewarding just because I've gotten to know these guys pretty well. And it's just super fun to see that type of growth and success from them. So it's not necessarily a size thing, but it is, if they're ready to go find a space, I want to help them. And the people that are responsive and serious about it, we'll be serious with them and commit some time and effort to go find it. So I think for us, that's more what we look at. It's hard though, because you do get sign calls and you do get inbound leads that sometimes don't go anywhere, but having that software sales background, I use some software tools to help me in my follow-up just to ensure that we touch point with those people 4 or 5 times before we let them go. Because I don't want to drop the ball, right, for our landlord clients when we're listing a property. So it's a little bit of give and take trying to find who's ready to move and who's not. But that flushes itself out usually in that process.
Yeah, I was curious, like how do you like tech, right? You have to qualify. How do you go about qualifying someone that's ready? Because oftentimes we hear surety of is like the number one priority,
Mhm.
but it's in the initial stages of building a relationship. It's not like we can just send a bank account or bank statement to show that we have the capital. And
Yeah.
so, um, is there a process that you've gone through to really vet someone that is actually ready and qualified that has enabled you to be successful and find those right groups?
Um, I think it's probably a little bit more nuanced than that because you have buyers and you have tenants. And I think those two processes are totally segmented and separate. Um, like I mentioned, a 1,500 square foot deal, you might get a deal done in a week. It might be really fast if they're ready to go and you have 3 or 4 sites you can go tour. You get an LOI turned in, you get that quickly responded to and agreed, and then you get a lease draft. It can happen really fast. Um, on the other hand, you don't know, I guess is what I'm saying, until you start working with someone.
Mhm.
So for me, the process is the same at the start. I'm gonna put the effort in to give them some options to look at, and you can tell pretty quick, I think, based on their response, how serious they are. Because we'll send some and then we don't hear back from somebody for a week or 2 weeks. And then we'll send some to another group and they're back to us within 15 minutes saying, hey, I just looked through these. I like these two. Can you find anything else that are similar to that? And so I think it's just a little bit of a matter of feeling it out in each situation for us. Um, on the sales side, it's a little bit different because, sometimes you're talking to landowners that have owned land for years and years, and there's an emotional attachment there too, that selling it takes some coaxing and negotiating, and you got to have the right buyer that has a vision for the property that matches kind of what the seller is envisioning for what their legacy should be. So that side's a little bit trickier, I think, but on the buy side, tenant side, it's usually just a matter of people engaging with you, and you start to work through that process and just kind of figure it out.
I love that. I think that it's probably like one of the more overlooked aspects of real estate, like negotiations and just transacting on a consistent basis, right? It's if you're responsive and you show up, then generally good things are going to happen. Same in
Mhm.
like any sport that we've ever played. If you show up and practice, then you're going to get better. But if you just kind of talk the talk and say, "Hey, I want to get better. I want to be better," and you don't do it, then nothing's ever rewarding going to happen to you.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's cool. I think one thing that's really interesting with brokerage, I have my license, but it's more on the residential side and I don't use it. It's like a convenient thing to have if I need to help a friend or like do my own house, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the stat is, but like the vast majority of brokers in their first year burn out, right? And obviously you're coming from like the tech world into real estate, don't really have background in real estate. It probably would have been really easy to burn out quick, like the vast majority of people, because I think there's more agents than there are listings in like the state of Utah.
Mhm.
What advice would you have for people who are just starting out to kind of get over that hump of burning out and kind of hitting the ground running and finding success early?
Oh, that's a good question. I I was pretty fortunate, I feel like, in having Ryan as a partner early on because we had enough to work on that like I wasn't cold calling property owners all the time, right? And that's part of what burned me out in software. I felt like each job that I had in software turned into somewhat of a call center, and it was kind of inside sales type. I had one outside role, but it wasn't my favorite. It felt very transactional, and that's what led me to burnout, right? The relationships weren't there. Um, but I feel like with Ryan, we were pretty busy early on and throughout that 4.5 years that I was with him. Um, and so having some deals to work on and seeing the success and the process of those close, I think that is one of the things that helped me realize like, hey, I can do this. It's just a matter of effort. It's a matter of patience. It's a matter of having the right tools and the right people in my corner to help me get through that. So I would say to someone new, finding the right team to be a part of, and the right team at the start of your career might not be the right team at the end of your career, and that's okay. Um, there's going to be changes in the market, in who you are as a person as you go through your career, right? You go through phases of maybe early on you're not married, then you've got kids, and you're dealing with all the activities and things of that nature. Um, so finding the right team and the right mentors to help, and having resources when you have questions pop up to be able to go ask people, hey, have you ever come across this? And that's one thing I've been very fortunate with, is, Ryan, but also some other brokers in our market, specifically Brandon Wood. He's up here. He's got his own little brokerage called the Northwood Group. Just a fantastic guy, and he's the type of guy that he might not be involved in the deal at all, but would be willing to sit down with me for a half hour and answer a couple questions or give me his professional opinion of like, hey, here's how I would handle it. So having people like that you can go bounce ideas off of, and or take to lunch or whatever, I think that's a huge part of learning the business and just being new, but getting through that first year or two and the risk of burnout. Hopefully that answers that.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like you've obviously surrounded yourself with good teams and good mentors. I'm curious, for me, I've got a couple of friends of mine that are getting into like the residential agent side,
Mhm.
and yourself and others that are on the commercial broker side. What would you say, or you know, is there a is there a reason that you were more? I mean, obviously Ryan, but is there a reason that you went on the more commercial side, and what what do you like, or maybe what are the differences that if someone's interested in getting into real estate, that maybe they should consider maybe the pros and cons of commercial versus residential? Is there any insight that you could give to our listeners?
Um, I can speak to the commercial side. The residential side, I don't know. And usually if I get a residential opportunity, I refer that out to one of the people I know that do it because it's not my specialty.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to whoever the client is if I tried to do that because it's just not my expertise. But as far as pros and cons on the commercial side, and I can speak to the industrial stuff specifically, is the pros, sometimes the deal sizes are larger, so your opportunity for a fee can be bigger. There's the relationships, I would say, are a huge part of that for me. I've been very fortunate the last 4 or 5 years to have some great clients who love golf, for example, and I've had the opportunity to go on 4 or 5 or 6 different golf trips with these clients to places that are like bucket list courses for me. And it's been an incredible opportunity to spend a couple days in some cases with these guys who are so successful, and be able to kind of just pick their brain or just be around their network of people.
Mhm.
Um, One of those trips in 2020, I think it was 2020, turned into, one of the people on that trip, or two of the guys on that trip, are now a client that I'm helping with a big development here in Davis County on the leasing side, right? I never would have had that opportunity without that trip that I went on. Um, so things like that are like the huge pros to me. I also love that commercial is really, at least I feel like it is way less emotional than residential, where you get a family walking through a house and maybe everything's perfect, but they hate the color of the kitchen, which things are solvable, but just on first impression, there's so much emotion, or a seller is really emotionally tied to a certain number.
Mhm.
Whereas in the commercial world, I feel like it's really more just the math of the deal and what a group can pay versus what the building's worth. There's a lot less emotion, and it's easier to either get a deal done or walk away from it if it doesn't work, if that makes sense. The cons to the commercial side, though, I would say, is the deal length is usually a lot longer than a residential sale, at least in most cases, I would say. I mentioned early on there's some of those deals that happen pretty quick, but we've had deals, Ryan and I have had deals that lasted 2 years. Um, my current partner Ashley and I, like we've had deals that have been a year in the making. Um, we've had deals that have been 3 days on the smaller end, right? So it's kind of all across the board. But generally, I feel like commercial deals typically take longer. So that's kind of maybe one of the cons. But I don't know. It's been mostly pros for me. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fun business to be in, a fun segment of the economy to be a part of.
When you kind of look out in the next 3 to 5 years, or even like in your career, what what are Rand's aspirations and goals of where you at now versus if you were in the same room 5 years from now and you could talk to yourself and say like, "Hey, I did this and I'm super proud of myself." Like, what would
Mhm.
it take, do you think?
Um, yeah, when I think about like a legacy type question like that, I want to look back and just know that effort was put in every day and that we did a good job for clients and that we did our best, and I think if I focus on that, I think the results will be there. Um, I think that again, it goes back to the little things, I think, Henry, like being responsive and doing those little the things that sometimes aren't fun. Like I keep a list every day in I use a software, but I keep this list of people I need to reach out to every day or deals that I need to check in on every day. And there's times I got to be honest, I come into the office and I'll see like what my list is for the day, and I'm like, I'm just mentally exhausted before I start, you
Yeah.
know? But it's days like that when you get through it that I'm like, oh, like such a relief off my shoulders to get through what I needed to get through for the day. And you feel accomplished. And then, like I said, if you do that day after day, it just multiplies. And then you look back in a year and you're like, man, I did a lot this year. And the numbers may or may not reflect that in your actual commissions, right, at the end of the year, or deal value, however you want to measure your business. But over time, my belief is that they'll be there if the effort's there, right? So that's kind of my focus. I don't have certain numbers that I'm like, hey, I got to hit this number this year and this number next year. For me, it's just showing up every day and doing what I can to make sure that my family's taken care of, and I feel that sense of purpose to help Ashley and her family as well, to make sure they're taken care of, and yeah, so that's kind of I guess my approach to the daily.
That's cool, Rand. What I guess kind of to being cognizant of time, I think what I'm learning is relationships matter to you. You've been
Mhm.
successful building those. You've been quick to engage or communicate with those particular clients. You've been patient. Um, you've played the long game. You know, other than those things, like you're a family man. You've got life's bigger than just real estate, right? And if we were to talk in 20 to 30 years and all three of us are retired, like other than being good at that, like what 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 are your values? Like what gets you ticking that's like bigger than real estate, but that matters? Like what do you want people to know about you aside from those initial things that would influence someone to want to work with you versus 10 other people?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I think at the end of the day, just that I love my family and the people around me, and they're what makes me go, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that for I'm trying to think the right way to word this, but I think at the end of the day, I want to be a guy that if if a friend called me, I want to be there.
Uh-huh.
If they needed help, I want to be reliable and be someone that they could count on to show up for them. Um, and that's what drives me. I want to be generous. I want to be fair. I want to be full of integrity. Um, all those type of things. Like faith matters a lot to me. But at the end of the day, family is what it boils down to for me.
It's almost like if I'm just envisioning if you had a personal like Google review rating, like a 5-star rating. It's like it's fun hearing you say this because it's like, okay, what would my family give me out of 5 stars, right? Based off of the values that I've kind of implemented. What would my working relationships give me, you know? And I love that approach to it way more than I want to do $1 billion in transactions versus I want to be a 5-star human to other humans because at
Yeah,
the end of the day, that's like what legacy is, which is really cool.
yeah. And I got work to do, right? I mean, you go ask my wife, I'm not perfect. I'd be the first to admit that. Um, Sometimes it's hard to give your kids all the attention when you feel like there's so much at work you got to get done. It's hard to find that balance. I'm not probably the role model for it today, but I want to get there. And there. But at the end of the day, like I said, family drives everything. We just had the chance to go to Bear Lake last week. We were missing our 14-year-old because she was at FSY last week, so we missed her. But we had a good time up there, just hanging at the beach for a few days and getting in the cold water. Felt great,
You just had
and then just hanging out, yeah, watching movies together. It was a lot of fun.
just a bunch of cold plunges at this time of year.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was like low 60s, so it was bearable. Still cold.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think it's cool, like family. I think it's cool what you said about like you're very cognizant of Ashley and her family. I think it just says without saying it, you're a good leader and you want her to be successful. And it sounds like you've surrounded yourself and she's a valuable asset. Um, Looking at your LinkedIn, it looks like you've got an interest in photography, specifically golf photography.
yeah,
And I'm curious, you think about all the greats and the great shots that have transpired over the history of golf. Like if you could be the photographer for one specific shot or putt for a specific event, and I don't know if I'm speaking the lingo, I don't know what it's called. like
oh, you're good. You're doing great.
like what who, what would that be, and why?
Hmm, man, that's a good question. Um, just off the cuff, I'd probably go with that winning putt for Tiger at the 2019 Masters, just because of the redemption story. And I've always been a big Tiger fan. Like that's kind of what got me like ignited into golf. I remember watching the 97 Masters when he won by 12, and I was just enthralled, right? And then I was hooked, like watching. And so that's probably the moment. But there's so many, Brian, that it's hard to nail down just one. Like I would love to be there for the 86 Masters when Jack won it. Um, the the PGA that Phil won just a couple years ago, was amazing and electric. I don't know, there's just so many. I don't know if I could pick one,
Yeah,
but those would be kind of three off the top of my head.
Tigers chip in on 16, and
Yeah.
was that? I mean,
Yeah, I
so
think it was '05 if I'm not mistaken. I was on my mission at the time, but I think that was '05.
yeah.
That's
That would
cool.
have been a nice P-Day event or something.
I I actually remember, dude. I remember knocking doors on Masters weekend, and I remember a couple of houses like having that on in the background. And when they opened the door, I was just like, "Oh, that's all I want to do is go watch that."
That's
Fun.
awesome, man. Well,
But
how
yeah, golf photography's been fun. It's just a hobby for me, but
yeah,
it's fun.
so how um like you've got your family, you've got your brokerage. Like how do you approach developing that hobby? Have you always been interested in that or has someone been mentoring you to do?
Um, no, I probably have too many hobbies, dude. And I get, I have a, I don't know if it's an addictive personality, but with photography, for example, when we had our second daughter, Olive, back in 2013, I remember we bought, or I should say, I bought a nicer camera, and the intention was for my wife and I to be able to use that to take pictures of the kids, and have these nice photos. And my wife would probably tell you I commandeered the camera, I started doing, just different photos and whatever. And it was self-taught largely. where I would go online. I can't remember the website I would go to, but I would go and just read articles about aperture and lighting and shutter speed and all the different, ISO, all the different things you can tweak in an image, and started learning how to shoot in full manual mode versus just auto on a nicer camera. And from there, it just kind of spiraled. And then I got into like doing golf courses and taking pictures at just when we'd go play a casual round in men's league or whatever, I'd bring the camera along and just snap photos. So I've got some great photos over the years of different places, and I've been able to take that camera to, anywhere from Erin Hills, Whistling Straits, Pebble Beach, all these different cool places to take photos. And it's funny though, because I look back, I'm like, the golf courses are cool and the pictures of the courses are amazing, but it's like the people in the photos is like what the memory is, that I'm like, oh, that was fun,
Yeah.
So it's fun to look back through some of that stuff, but I think it's just more of a creative outlet for me, and every image is different, and you can take the same hole. Like, you've seen how many pictures of like, hole 12 at Augusta or hole 7 at Pebble Beach, and you might get there and like in your mind be able to frame a picture differently than what you've seen before. And I think it's just that creative outlet that you can tweak things and do it your style.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you have one, I'll wrap up with, you've been to a lot of fun courses. What is next on the bucket list, or like the absolute top of bucket list of where you want to go still in your life?
For golf,
Yeah.
I haven't done the old course yet, so I'd love to go do Scotland, do St. Andrews and some of that stuff over there. Yeah. See, you're repping. I would love one day to get to Pine Valley. Not been back there. I haven't even done Bandon Dunes yet, honestly. But I've had some great ones that we've been able to knock off the list over the last few years. And I actually, in fact, I'll show you this real quick. In my office, I have this display.
Oh, fun.
So it's just like pencils from every course that I've gone to play. And I still have, like, I just started this a few years back. So there's a lot of courses in Utah I don't have on here that I've played that I need to get pencils from. But
You're like, these are just the courses I played in the last 6 months.
no, I wish, but it's fun looking at that list. I look up there and I'm like, one of my favorites is Pasatiempo, Cypress Point, San Francisco Golf Club, Shadow Creek, Summit Club. There's so many good courses out there, and it's fun to kind of look over at that every now and then during the day and daydream about being back at one of those places.
That's
So,
all. Man. Well,
yeah.
if there's someone that's listening today that has an interest in either buying industrial or wants to build a relationship with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? And if you don't mind maybe sharing that, then we can kind of have that in the transcript or put it out in any post. But would love to just hopefully help bring more business to you. Like, what's the best way?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just email or phone or text, whatever's easiest for people. Connect on LinkedIn, and happy to do whatever's best for them.
Cool.
Um, and again, yeah, our focus is industrial, but if it's in Davis County, we do some office deals, we do some land deals. There's, and even if it's, hey, I don't know where to start, but here's what I'm looking for. We get a handful of those every month. That I just had one last week where a guy reached out that I've known for a long time, and I told him, I'm like, I'm not the right guy for that, but I'll help you get in the right person's hands, because it was a retail deal. A ton of retail guys at Mountain West that are awesome. So anything retail, I just hand over to them and let them do their magic.
Yeah. Well, shout out to you, because you introduced us to Raleigh and Mark, and we're under contract on a deal with them. So
Yeah, they're great guys.
yeah. Thank you, Rand. And you've been awesome, dude. And just wish you the best of luck as a father and as a photographer and as a broker, dude. We'll be cheering you on, man.
Well, I appreciate it. And thanks again for having me on. It's fun to get to know you guys a little bit better, and would love to get out and play with you guys. It'd be fun.
Let's do it.
100%. Thanks,
Awesome.
Rand.
Man. Have a great
Appreciate
day.
it. Okay, you too. Bye.